Good evening. Hi, welcome to True Stories Live. Yes, a few muted whoops. That's all I need. How are you all? I want to sort of find out in a noise. So I'm going to count to 3, and I want you to do an honest, genuine noise to express your inner state. Okay? Not yet. That was good though. It was crazed. I like it. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Noise! Wow, they're an intense bunch. Well, that's very nice. I feel like I've got the measure of you. I won't do my noise. Well, maybe I will later, privately. I'm already being weird. I'll stop. Okay, so nice to see you all. My name's Molly. What's yours? Good to meet you. This is True Stories Live. Let's see who's been here before. Hands up if you've been here before. I can just about see you. Hands up if you've not been here before. Hands up if you nearly came and then you just couldn't be bothered, or you got COVID, or your life fell to shit and you tried but you couldn't. Great. Well, it's really great to have you. If you haven't been, I'll briefly tell you what's going to happen. We are going to hear some stories tonight, true stories from people's lives. That's all it is. It's very simple. And the theme tonight is don't count your chickens. Exactly. So last time we were here, I spoke to a woman in the audience who talked about the fact that she didn't fart in front of her husband. And I would love to know if she's in tonight. She's not here. I suppose she's very busy with the divorce, because we just decided that her marriage wasn't tenable because she was not farting in front of him. And we all got very worried and invested in this journey, and I really wanted to know what happened next. But I guess hopefully she'll come next time once things have settled down and they've worked out custody of the animals and things. So if anyone knows the farting woman, please tell her we're thinking of her. It was just so shocking. Does anyone else want to own up to any weird farting stuff? Any like non-farters or secret farters? No, why would you? And that is a question that she probably asked herself the next day after telling us so much. But I love her, and I hope she returns and isn't too ashamed. Maybe don't tell her I spoke about it. So you might notice that, so we've been manipulating you a little bit. We've been telling you that the event starts at 7 o'clock. Have you noticed that? And it actually starts at 7:30. And I apologize, we didn't trust you, and you have proved yourself to be trustworthy. So we're going to start admitting now on our publicity that it starts at 7:30, but you cannot let that turn into 8 o'clock. Because in Norwich Arts Centre audiences, we were just talking about this, normally they arrive 1 minute before, and then they decide to get around for the whole audience. And I love that energy, but it doesn't really work for us because we want to be respectful to our storytellers. So if we start telling you the truth, do you promise to respect us back? Keep it the same. Do you think? Do you reckon? What, just lying? Oh, okay. What's your name? Peter. And are you a regular? No, first time. Peter? Well, and you're so brave. It's your first time, and you've decided to just contribute. I think what's happened is are you a Geordie? I think when we have a Geordie, basically we have to it's the rules. We have to hand over the night. Peter, if you want to interrupt me at any point, this is your night. You're a Geordie, you're a storyteller. It all comes from you. So, okay, we will keep it the same. Thank you, Peter. So, Peter, what made you decide to come tonight? We were in the 10 bells. Yeah, I think we've established that. Seems like a big part of your week. 10 bells yesterday. Yeah. And I said, what's the name of that church across the road? So we looked it up with St. Swithin's. Yeah. And then St. Swithin's then led to the Norwich Arts Centre. Yeah. Yeah. And give it a go. Thank you so much. Yeah, a round of applause for Peter. Well, welcome. I hope you enjoy it. I know you will. And would you, in the future, come and tell a story? Oh. I think we might have trouble keeping him off the stage, but no, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for joining us and bringing your pals or your family. Such a Geordie. This is the most Geordie thing I've ever seen. Gillian. Oh, how are you doing, Gillian? You okay? Yeah, what's the farting deal with you two? Gillian? Yeah, we'll crack on. Okay, wonderful. So tonight we have a lovely lineup for you tonight. We have 3 speakers in our first half, and I think it's nearly time we bring the first one on. I think I just want to check, if you've not been here before, I need to ask you a massive favour. The speakers that you're going to hear tonight, some of them may be experienced orators, some of them may have never done anything like this before, some of them might be feeling really nervous, so you as an audience need to be just really supportive and lovely and warm if you can, because they might be terrified. So yeah, you're going to do that for me, aren't you? I know you are. You always do. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to bring up our first speaker of the night, and I'm so delighted to welcome her. She is Jane Duffield-Bish.
Thank you. Hi, this is an everyday tale of old people and internet dating. So what could possibly go wrong, I don't hear you ask? Well, this all started about 4.5 years ago. A friend of mine mentioned Guardian Soulmates, and I thought, maybe I could do that. So I gave it a go, and it all seemed to go surprisingly well. I met a bloke, we seemed well matched, and I thought maybe it was going to last forever. Unfortunately, he turned out to be a manipulative, lying bastard, so that's a whole other story. But the upshot is, August 2020, I found myself online dating again. And at this point, I think I was fairly realistic. I think I did not count on the demand for short, scatty, 60-something widows to be overwhelming. But nonetheless, I thought maybe I'd meet someone that I could have a good time with. So Guardian Soulmates had closed by this time, so I signed up to Classic Romance. And I was expecting to be in the virtual midst of lots of gentle, sonata-loving souls. So I was a bit perplexed when I found myself looking at lots of photos of men toting guns and men leaning proudly against big shiny cars, and men whose profiles very irritatingly seemed to be banging on about wokery and political correctness. So this was a bit strange, but I then discovered that actually Classic FM shares a platform called the Dating Lab with other organisations like Motor Weekly and Shooting Times and the Daily Telegraph. So that kind of explains a little bit. Anyway, I was only a little bit deterred, so I got on with writing my profile, and I thought, right, I'm going to be really clear about things. So the first 3 lines of my profile were socialist, atheist, feminist. So I then start getting messages from people with headlines like Welsh vicar seeking feminine lady with traditional values, okay? And then I got a message from someone said, I'm a Tory, but I don't mind that you're left-wing. Would you like to meet for coffee? So my first lesson was don't count on people actually reading your profile. And if they do read your profile, don't count on them taking it in the slightest bit seriously. So I'm looking at other people's photos and I'm thinking I need to be a little bit open-minded about this. It's probably not reasonable to totally dismiss someone just because they've got an excessive number of buttons open on their shirt or because there's a glimpse of Artex coving in one of their photos. But unfortunately, experience taught me pretty quickly that I should follow my gut feelings, and that those first impressions, well, I couldn't count on those first impressions being less than about 98% accurate. So that was that. Then I started reading people's profiles, and any of you who've done this will know that you come up with the same things over and over again. So all these people tell me that their friends would describe them as considerate and caring, and then they tell me that they're a glass half full person, and they're all very tactile, which was slightly worrying. Then when they talk about the kind of person they're looking for, you come up with the same things over and again. They all want ladies, not women, which I found a bit odd. And a lot of them wanted ladies who look after themselves. Well, I'm thinking I haven't got a living carer or a valet, so that's all right. So that was that. But some of them, sort of the original ones, they could kind of like be even more worrying. And some of them are so outrageous that I thought, well, I just couldn't let that go. One particular bloke said that you needed to be size 10 or 12. So I thought, God, that's not okay. So I'm going to have a little bit of fun here. So he liked my profile. So I sent him a message saying, thank you so much for the like, and I've looked at your profile, fascinating. Unfortunately, we're not a match because I'm only size 8. And so did he notice that he was having the proverbial taken out of him? Absolutely not. So the lesson there for me is don't count on people being reasonable, and certainly don't count on them noticing if you are actually taking the piss out of them. Anyway, so things did progress with one or two people to a conversation, and sometimes even to a second conversation. One instance where that didn't happen was I spoke to a chap who looked like we might have a few things in common. He looked reasonable. After 10 minutes on the phone, I realised that absolutely not. Couldn't get off the phone for like another 40 minutes, but luckily it was left that I would call him, so obviously I wasn't going to. Then I'm at a book club meeting with my friends, and I forgot to put my phone on silent, and my phone starts going mental with WhatsApp messages. I wonder what on earth was going on. After the meeting ended, my friend was giving me a lift home. I looked at my phone, and it took me a while to work out what was going on. But this chap, for some reason, somehow had set up a WhatsApp group of himself and me and 5 other women, okay? But it turned out that it was all the other women he'd been talking to. And I think what he'd been trying to do, what he thought he was doing, was just setting up a little file for himself on WhatsApp so that he knew all these people were. So we're all saying, what is this? Who are you? We work out what's going on. He realised what he'd done, but he then makes the mistake of leaving the WhatsApp group but not deleting any of us. So we have a great evening comparing notes, and I suggested that maybe one of us should arrange a date with him, and then we all turn up, which would have been quite fun. He, meanwhile, is sending panicky text messages, and he sent me a text message saying, I'm really sorry, I don't know how this happened. What I was trying to do was to delete all the details of all the other people I was speaking to before I spoke to you. Unfortunately, Julia and Linda got exactly the same message. So the lesson of that is don't count on these old online dating people having a clue about technology. Now, surprisingly, one or two of these things did actually lead to brief relationships. And one was with a guy who was nice looking. We had a lot in common. We seemed to get on quite well. As I got to know him, I realised that we were very different in some ways. And one is that I'm very chaotic, like to be spontaneous. He organised every detail of his life down to within an inch of its life. And didn't do spontaneity, had a schedule for everything, had lists for everything. And I kind of had to make an appointment to speak to him. And once I rang him without an appointment, and it ended very badly. And he asked me to let him know in advance next time I was going to be spontaneous. So that didn't last. And the lesson of that is, you know, even if somebody says they want a relationship, don't count on them actually wanting to spend more than sort of half a day every third Wednesday with you. And certainly don't count on them prioritising talking to you above cleaning their skirting boards. So that was that. So I learned quite a lot, lots of things that you can't count on in the world of online dating. And there are a few tips that I would kind of like to share with any of these people if I could. Number one would be, if you're sending a message to someone, read it before you send it, because Dear Chloe isn't a good start if you're writing to someone called Jane. Number two would be, it's a little bit confusing if you keep referring to your other half during your first telephone conversation with someone you're speaking to from an online dating site. Number three, when you're filling in the bit on the profile where you're invited to rate your own looks, if you pick attractive or very attractive, then at least have the courage of your conceitedness and post a photo. Number four, it is not appropriate to suggest as a venue for a first date a nudist caravan site in Orpington. So here I am. I've met a lot of people that I really liked and I didn't fancy. And I met a lot of people who apparently liked me but didn't fancy me. There have been countless times when I've got out of my car in the car park of a pub in some far-flung part of Norfolk, seen my date and thought, shit, this is 2 hours of my life that I'm never going to get back. And there have also been times when I've thought that my heart was utterly broken, irretrievably smashed into smithereens, but, you know, generally I've been okay after about 23 hours, so that's okay. I have thought maybe I should just give up, you know, maybe it's time to buy a canary, learn to crochet, just start acting my age. But I'm not quite there, and probably no one should count on that happening anytime soon. Thank you.
Jane Duffield-Bish! Thank you so much. I hate being added to WhatsApp groups, but I really want to be part of that one with all the women. Guys, this is a prize for the best audience member. I'm not obviously going to give it out now. We don't know who's the best audience member, but I thought I'd mention it. You're being a fantastic audience so far, but we just like to offer this as a little treat to tempt people to be extra lovely, but also maybe do something weird at any point to spice up the night. So it's some gorgeous coffee from Strangers. I'm going to read you the tasting notes and make myself vom in the process. So here we go. Nougat, tiramisu, and stroopwafel. Oh yeah, I'm getting it. But yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful coffee from our friends, the Strangers. So do something great, take a risk at some point during the night, and you could win it. Should we have another speaker? Is someone okay over there? Okay, fantastic. We're going to have our second speaker of the night. Jane was a fantastic start. I'd like to introduce you to a returning speaker. We haven't heard from her in a long time. I'm so happy she's back. Please welcome Suze Close.
That'll work, won't it? You can hear me. Hi. So my story's not all that funny, sorry, and it's not really about chickens or counting, but it is about dogs. It's not funny. A year ago, my dog died. Yeah, sorry. It doesn't get much better. But basically, I was really sad. And I was really surprised by how sad I was. See, I've always had animals. She was my first dog, but I've always had animals. My dad's a biologist. I have a very pragmatic attitude, I thought, to animals. I feel very strongly, you know, we have a responsibility to give them the best life that they can, and then we have a responsibility to make sure that they don't suffer for any longer than we can control. So when my dog died, and I was really sad, I was really, I guess, a bit sidelined. Is that the word? Yeah. It really shocked me. And then I felt really guilty about how sad my dead dog made me. Because everybody had been losing people. You know, this was a year ago, people were still dying of COVID. We had friends who died that year. You know, that it didn't seem right that I was sad for my dog, but it didn't stop the fact that I was sad. But, I suppressed it, and I got up the next day and I went to work, and people came and said, "Oh, I'm really sorry to hear about your dog." And I said, "Oh, yeah, no, she had a good life," but I didn't mean it, because what I really wanted to do is really just cry and say, "Yeah, I'm really sad and I don't want to be here and I want to go home and go back to bed." But I didn't, because you don't do that, because then you're a weirdo. But I didn't stop being sad. And then I had these sensory hallucinations, and that was weird. So I'd be like in the kitchen, and I would hear my dog get off her bed, off her little sofa, and I'd hear her little clippy-clappy claws and a little jingle-jangle collar, and she'd be coming down the corridor, and I'd turn around, but she wasn't there. Or I'd be cooking, and I'd feel her come and stand beside me, and look up and wait to get some sort of treat from me, because I'm very good at chopping. And I'd look down and she wasn't there, but she'd been there. I felt that she was there. So I had to find out what was going on, because I need to know stuff. I don't deal with things without knowing them very well. It's like a weird control thing I have. But anyway, so I started researching grief hallucinations, and I found that they're a really common, well-documented things, and probably lots of people have had them. And there's a couple of hypotheses that I found. One is that it's your brain's coping mechanism of giving you a little comfort blanket-y thing to help you cope. The other thing is it's your senses catching up with reality. And that one made sense for me, because, especially when you share a space with someone or something, it's just part of your day, so your senses can expect these things. That's how I kind of looked at it. And then I've read that it's really common to have these with pet bereavements. And then I read a bit more, and I read about disenfranchised grief. And I read how common this is with pet bereavement. So we all grieve. Grief is a part of the human condition. As I don't have to tell you that, you're grown-up people. But generally, we learn, our grief is here, and we grow around our grief, and the grief stays the same. But it's ultimate change management, I suppose. Our life changes and we grow, and new things come in, and the grief is still there, but it's just things are different. When you have disenfranchised grief, it's not so easy to grow around your grief. So it's things if you someone who you're estranged from dies, or someone you're having an affair with maybe, and you can't have those same public grief rituals and death rituals, and you're maybe excluded from funerals and wakes, and you can't openly talk about your feelings and your grief. So it makes so it's disenfranchised. You can't process it in the same way. And so there's a real big connection between, I'm going to hurry up and get to the story in a minute, big disconnection between pet bereavement and this disenfranchised grief. And I was really interested in that, and it makes sense, because it's not socially acceptable to openly be very sad about your dog dying. It's kind of embarrassing. It's not the sort of thing you tell people, because you think people are going to judge you, and you're somehow deficient if you grieve your dead dog. But the thing about dogs is they're like the ultimate unconditional love giver. More so than even your mum. Because at some point, your mum's going to maybe want to fix you, or tell you to snap out of it, or have boundaries, because sometimes it's really hard to support somebody. But dogs don't have that. They don't have those boundaries. They just love you. So when you're going through something really tough, you can go to all the dark places with your dog. So about 5 years ago, I walked out on a marriage that I was in. And it was a bit toxic, and it was a really tough time in my life. And I was really lucky, though, that I was able to take my dog with me. We got together when I was in my very early 20s, so I arrived in my mid-30s to live alone on my own for the first time. My family was on the other side of the world, and I didn't know who I was. I was really lost, and it was all just a bit messy. But I wasn't alone because I had Rue. So I would go out and get very drunk and other things, and it could have been a challenging time, but I always came home because I had to come home for Rue. And I always got up the next day. That was my dog, by the way. I don't know if I introduced her earlier. And I always got up and went out the next day because I had to get up and go out for Rue. And slowly but surely, I worked out that people didn't all hate me. I worked out that I had my own thoughts and feelings that belonged to me, that I knew were mine. And we walked through this fog together. Fast forward to 2019, and I'm moving into a new house. I've got a new partner. Rue's there as well, obviously. I've started a new job, and I'm the happiest I've ever been in my adult life. And then a month later, I get cancer. So that was quite a tough time. And my partner was amazing through all of that, but we'd moved in together 1 month before. And all of a sudden, he had to deal with the fact that I could be very ill. But I had Rue. And like I said before, I'm one of those people, I have to know everything. So I had to read everything. I had to know, all of my chances, what every scenario could be. I had to know it. But I couldn't really share that with people because people don't want to go to those dark places, and that's okay, and I understand that because that's not nice. But I needed to. My partner didn't want to. He wanted to deal with what we could deal with there and then, and I wanted to deal with all the possible scenarios so I was prepared. So I'd take Rue with me. We'd go for a walk. I'd put on something really depressing like Radiohead. I'd go to all the really dark places, and then we'd come home again. And then eventually I had surgery, and she helped me in my recovery because it'd be like, okay, when can I walk Rue? All right, now I'll walk her a little bit further. Now I'll walk her a little bit further again. Then I had chemo, and it was the same sort of thing. Like every Friday, I'd have my cycle would start, and it'd be like, right, by next Thursday, I'm going to take Rue for a walk. And that was kind of, the next 8 months of my life. After 2 years, I was declared NED, so no evidence of disease, which is great. And I went back to full-time work. And then I came home one Sunday, and she had little lumps there, like in her jaw. And I thought, well, that's not so good. She'd slowed down. She was 11. But I thought, well, maybe it's just like an infection. So I'll take her to the vet tomorrow. I walked her up. She's still walking. Still happy to do that. So we walked out to the vets. But the vet made it pretty clear that it was unlikely that some antibiotics were going to do the job. He took a biopsy, but we didn't really wait for the results in the end. By Wednesday, she couldn't stand, she couldn't see, and it was just really distressing, and I knew that my responsibility was to make sure she didn't suffer. And so I was there. And like all those times when she was there for me, she had sat with her head on my leg, and I felt her last breath. And I went home, and I curled up under a duvet, and I cried, and my eyes hurt, and my body ached, and I thought that was just really the saddest thing out of all the things that had happened. And so I guess why I wanted to tell this story was because I'm still sad. I still cried today when I was thinking about this story. But I don't feel guilty anymore because I think it's okay to feel sad when you lose your dog. And I could look at my marriage and I have regrets there, and obviously I wouldn't wish having cancer on anybody, but I don't wish those things didn't happen to me. They're now part of my story. But if I could do one thing, if I had one magic wish, I would choose that my dog was still here. Thank you.
Sue's close. Thank you so much. Okay. We are going to have one more speaker before we take a little break. Peter, are you enjoying it? Great. I'm so pleased. Yeah. Good. Well, we have all stories here, stories of all types of life. So we are going to now move on to our final speaker in the first half, who is a returning speaker, but I think the last time he did a story here was so in the old days, we used to do True Stories live in the bar. Can you even imagine it now? We just thought when Lucy and I and Pasco came up with the idea for this, we just thought this is going to be a little thing where 15 people hang out in the bar and come together, and it'll be one of those things that grows. And then on the first one, it was like people were hanging off the rafters. And so, sounds like a brag. I guess it is. It's very popular, very successful event. But we kept it in the bar for ages, and then we moved it in here. So I think the last time we had this speaker, he was in the bar, and now here we are. So please, will you welcome the wonderful Tom Clutterbuck?
Graduated out of the bar, no longer getting upstaged by pints. Hello, I'm Tom. No dogs die in this story. Content wanted. Did you just say you wanted more? Okay, so yeah, no, nothing of significance has happened to me ever. So this will be excessively frivolous in comparison. I don't really have any sort of big life stories with beginnings, middle, and ends. It's just going to be like a collection of sort of quite weird anecdotes of things that I've done, a sort of like narrative tapas. Things that you didn't remember that you ordered. I'll just come when they're ready. So I used to want to be an actor back when I was young and an idiot, and I didn't always, I've never looked like a leading man, but I didn't always look quite so much like a 1970s substitute geography teacher. But I honestly, it's embarrassingly late into my sort of human development that I realized I would never play James Bond. I can't remember when I realized, but I was just like, oh yeah, that's not going to happen. I think I'd lost interest in watching Bond movies long before I realized that was going to happen. But so I'm not an actor. You don't know that, but I'm not. I'm a theatre technician. I sort of do lights and sound and stuff like that. But the one performance gig that I have had consistently and have done for nearly 20 years now, I did since graduating university, was a very strange thing. I'm sometimes a street theatre puppeteer. I know. Not like, I know we're in Norwich, so we have a very specific idea of what street puppetry is. Get that out of your minds. To everyone else in the world, it's actually art form. But it's not marionette. It's costume puppetry. So imagine something like Labyrinth or the Dark Crystal or something like that. So we did an act where there's two little old people about this big, and the puppet characters about this big, and then they're hidden inside all of their baggage. So as a human, I'm hidden inside it, and I'm puppeteering a character. Anyway, it's going to be hard to describe without making it sound shit. But the other act that we did was a giant bird. And so there's an 8-foot tall bird. His legs are made out of the bouncy stilts, and he has massive haunches, and he's sort of made out of feathers, enormous beak. He looks kind of like halfway between Big Bird from Sesame Street and the Skeksis from Dark Crystal, sort of like, a bit more bird-shaped, but not quite as terrifying. And my job was being next to him. So someone more talented than me was in the giant costume, and I was there as well. Because it's a really dangerous costume to be in because of the stilts and because of the sort of lack of visibility, and because we're in the street, we're not on a film set. It's just so like people can just run up and do, they want to have their photo taken, and like kids want to sort of get all up in his feathers and stuff. So largely, I'm sort of there partly for jokes, but also mainly for kind of crowd wrangling and cuddle admin. Kids taking in turns to have their photos taken and stuff like that. This is. The reason I think of this is because, don't count your chickens before they're hatched. That anything This is a bird-based idiom or pun, is hardwired into me because I have been saying them to people in the street for 20 years. Like, because the whole act is basically just sort of just helping little Timmy have his photo taken and then just doing a bird pun at the dad who will listen. And there's always someone who chimes in, someone a bit Peter-esque, who will just come in with a like, is it got a big chicken there? And I'm like quite back with her. Oh, he's not a big chicken. He's very brave. Ha 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 ha. Hilarity ensues. For 20 years. Yeah. So, don't fly the nest, or you're getting yourself in a flap. Don't worry, I'll be your wingman. It's all just that. It's just that shit. And it's very strange. There's lots of weird stories from doing that. In fact, one of the strangest ones actually took place in Norwich city centre, because once we get into a photo opportunity, because he's very top-heavy, because he's got big animatronic head and he's on bouncing stilts, I have to make sure that the bird doesn't fall over when we want to have a photo opportunity. So the other person who's having a photo will be on the other side of the giant bird, and I'll be here, and he's got a feathered glove, secrets of the trade, that he uses to hold on to either my shoulder or like a pole I was holding on, so you can't see that he's actually just holding on and balancing still, because if you're on stilts, you have to keep moving, and that's not great for photos. So I'm here, like, holding, he's holding onto my shoulder, and then on the other side there's a woman, and I wasn't aware of this at the time, but Rupert, the guy inside the costume, told me afterwards that the woman said, "I want to feel the man inside." And during the photo, just found a little gap in the costume where the head bit meets the bits that go around his leg, the sort of second part, like with military precision, found the gap, and of course, like, Pongo's waist area is actually kind of here on Rupert. It's very hot inside that costume as well, and this is summer, so he's not wearing an incredible amount underneath it. Puts a hand inside the costume, up his leg, he's wearing baggy cargo shorts, up the shorts, and he's not wearing anything under the shorts, and just grabs a hold. For the duration of the photo. And yeah, I didn't help. But yeah, it's not quite so X-rated. A lot of it. I mean, sometimes it's quite a scary gig because he's so unwieldy as a thing, and you know, I have to sort of be funny. I mean, my character, by the way, I forgot to mention, is called Bill Oddity. It's pretty good, isn't it? All right. And so largely doing bird puns and admin. But it used to be, when we first came up with the idea of the act, it used to be a duologue. Like, the bird had lines. He would speak as if he was Big Bird. And so I'd say a setup and he'd say a punchline. And our first ever gig, which I'd never done street theatre before, I'd just done, like, acting. I did a theatre degree. I'd been in, I don't know, ANECDOTAL plays or something like that. I've not done street theatre, improv, bird pun wrangling. So we're doing this duologue, these rehearsed lines, and then just halfway through the second set ever, Rupert just decides it's better with just me speaking. So I just sort of say a setup to him, and he just shakes his giant bird head. And I'm like, oh, I'm on my own here. Okay. And like, obviously this scenario here is just me talking to you, no one else. So like, it's not clear how terrifying that is to a person, but like, at least the social transaction here is that I speak and you listen for an allotted amount of time. Whereas like, when you do street theatre, there is no show, it's just in the street. And sometimes people come up to you and want to have a show, and sometimes you're just in their way trying to get to H. Samuel. Like, it's very strange. This was at Glastonbury, though, so, like, largely my job was reassuring people it was actually happening. Which actually, it turns out, a friend of mine was at that Glastonbury, a guy I went to uni with. He didn't know I did this. And it was the first time he ever took mushrooms. And he'd just come up to the point where he, started questioning what he was seeing, and then he saw his friend from university walk past with an 8-foot giant bird. That's not the recipe for a chill high. But yeah, that was pretty weird, but not by any means the scariest thing that happened at Glastonbury, because on the drive there, that was the first time I ever drove a van. We hired a van from the cheapest place you can possibly hire vans from, and we will never do that again, because as we were driving and coming down quite a massive hill, the brakes stopped working in the van. Now, they didn't stop working entirely because I'm still here, but those of you who are mechanically minded might know about, there's a pump in brakes that sort of takes the air out of it, so it means that effectively you are just you're pressing the brake as if you're pressing a button, and it is telling the brakes to be brakes. But if that fails, what you're left up with is what's called basic braking, which I now have learned about pretty quickly. I had a crash course in it. It's not a pun. I know you don't trust me anymore. But what it means is that you can brake as much as you can press down on the pedal with your strength, as if you literally just have a big rubber shoe and you're pushing it on the back of the wheel. It's kind of like that. And so I had to just stand up on the brakes, and everyone else who was in the van with me just push me down. And it's effectively like taking 5% off the speed per second sort of thing, which is not great when you're coming down a hill at 70 miles an hour. So yeah, we didn't crash, because fortunately it was a long enough stopping distance in front of us, and I managed to find somewhere safe to pull over and called the sort of breakdown assistance that we had. But because it was the world's cheapest van hire company, they had the world's shittest breakdown cover, and they were just like, "Nah, mate, we can pick you up and take you to a garage. Do you know of one?" I'm like, this is 2004. I don't have Google Maps. I just know that I'm near Glastonbury. I mean, we can go to Stonehenge and pray, but I don't know where there are any garages nearby. I was just we were just totally screwed, and we had to do this gig. We were booked to do several different performances at the festival, and so what I ended up doing was just driving the rest of the way, at 7 miles an hour, just drove all the way into the festival, did the weekend shows, drove all the way out at 7 miles an hour, got to Shepton Mallet Asda, then called the breakdown company and got them to tow us 14 hours to southeast London. But nobody died. So that's it, really. I think, I guess, wrapping it up, don't count your chickens before their eggs. What does it mean? It means just, you can make plans, but, they're fucked, aren't they? So just do whatever. Do whatever.
Tom Clutterbuck! Thank you so much. We are going to take a short break now, but before we do, a little bit of admin for you. Not admin, a little bit of, how can I reframe admin? That still sounds a little boring. I want it to sound jazzy and sexy. Jasmine. A little bit of jasmine. Jazzy admin. Thank you. So, bit of jasmine. What I need you to do during the break, we have some wildcard slots after the break because we had a little bit of illness with our second half. Don't worry, we have got some speakers, it's going to be fine. But we have a little bit of space for anyone who's in the audience and who's sat there thinking, I've got a story about this. A short story, an anecdote, a moment, a joke. So if that is you, come and find me in the break and we will maybe make space for you. If there's loads of you, we'll pull your names out of a hat. So come and find me for that. On your chairs, also, second bit of jasmine. You'll notice these little slips of paper, and these are for your mini stories. So I thought what we do for mini stories this month is bird anecdotes. We're going to keep it literal, right? So I've got a quick one to spark your imaginations. My friend was on a date, right, in Bristol, in this lovely hotel bar overlooking the gorge. What's it called? You know, where the Clifton suspension bridge is. And she was sat there, and she was on a first date, a Tinder date, but it was going fine, you know, it was going quite well. And And in that gorge, there are famously loads of peregrine falcons that nest like we've got on the cathedral here. And she didn't know this at the time. She was just in the gorge having a drink. I mean, in the pub having a drink. And anyway, she was just sat there talking to this woman. Yep, having a nice chat, all good. And then she felt what she described as feeling like a full nappy hit her on the back of her neck. And it turned out it was a dead, half-eaten pigeon that a peregrine falcon had dropped out of its gob. So we had some bad date stories earlier, but I don't think anything could top that. So do you have any bird anecdotes? Are we bird watchers? Anything happened to you with a bird? Write them on your mini story bits of paper. Try and keep it to like a few lines. And please can you make it legible, because I can't ever read them. It'd be so nice if I could tonight. I think that's all I have to tell you for this first half end. That's probably all the Jasmine. If you win the coffee, it's full beans, but strangers will grind it for you. They will grind your beans. Okay, please, 15 minutes, take your glasses back to the bar, and I will see you in a bit. Please, round of applause for all the speakers we've had so far in this half. Thank you. Welcome back to the second half of True Stories Live! Guys, there's some intense stories. I really didn't know you had so many bird anecdotes. On holiday in Malta with my ex, walking around an area which is a sanctuary for endangered birds. We forgot about this after a while until we heard a crunch. An endangered baby bird flew out from the wilderness, and my ex's instinct was to stamp her feet down and put her hands over her ears. She killed the endangered baby bird. Big fan. Peter's a big fan. Keeping on the online dating theme, last summer I was on my way to a first date, a dog walk in Eaton Park. Exactly, lovely, lovely choice. It was sunny and I was filled with optimism. And that's where the story ends, no. However, as I walked under a tree, a bird shat into my fringe. I had to run to Eaton Park to ensure I got there early and wash my fringe in the toilet sink. However, it was one of those hole-in-the-wall soap water dryer combo type sinks, and I had to do the whole cycle about 5 times. Classic. My 5-year-old son was so scared of a marabou stork, an enormous bird, common in Kenya, that he did a big poo on the bathroom floor of a public pool. Now, Peter, we always have a poo story, so there we go. We've ticked that one off. I need to read that one. It's intense. Living in Kenya, again, gifted a chicken by a new gardener named Sam. We called the chicken Samantha. We offered her our love, but she escaped through a hole in the fence and was squashed on the road the next day. Poor Samantha. My sister's boyfriend came round to our family home. My dad, who subscribes to a company called Wiggly Wigglers, from whom he buys worms and bird feed, insisted on giving him a robin feeding demonstration. They broke up soon after. Once upon a time, I was dressed as a big yellow bird on Britannia Pier in good old Yarmouth. It was a dance show. I was performing my little heart out until I began to choke on one of my feathers. Somehow I managed to style it out in front of hundreds of spectators, and I'm still here to tell the tale. The end. Right, one more. With reference to the first story, I actually met my wife at a naturist venue in Kent. Good to know. Okay, we'll save some of them. We have 2 wildcards for you, which is very exciting. So, the first one is a returning speaker, but again, we haven't had her for so long, so we're so happy to welcome her back. Please welcome the wonderful Antoinette Moses. It sort of doesn't go lower, so I'm just going to give you that.
That's fine. So, there I was, buying eggs in Kabul, as you do. The reason for this was that my boyfriend, being rather mean at the time, he was mean in many ways, we'll come to that, but he didn't want to pay for a hotel. We were on the hippie trail. It's 1971. The hippie trail was rather like the Grand Tour. The Grand Tour was when the rich went all the way around and stole artifacts. The hippie trail was when people went around the world stealing culture and staying. It was like a sort of bad holiday, but you didn't have any hotels. And we were in Kabul, not staying in a hotel, because he'd found that there were some hippies who had started what they called a hippie hotel, which was just a house. And they wanted a cook, and he said, my girlfriend's a cook. Well, I could cook, but I wasn't a cook. But that didn't really matter. I got a job as a cook. And the first day I went to the market, and I saw all this black meat hanging, and I went, clap. I can't clap when I'm holding a mic. You'll have to clap for me. And clouds of flies flew up, and the meat wasn't black, it was just black with flies. So it became a vegetarian house. I was not going to cook meat. But eggs, yes, we could have eggs. Otherwise, I was doing stews of onions with potatoes, or curried potatoes with onions, or onion and potato soup. Eggs would be fun. But the first time we got eggs, they were absolutely disgusting and filled the house with the smell of sulfur. So I decided to go to the market and buy some eggs. I didn't know how to work out. There was no nice signs. There were no date stamps. Well, not actually, there were date stamps, eggs in England at that time. So a man came up beside me, and I was and he said, do you have a problem? And I noticed that he had an Italian accent, and I did happen to speak Italian. So I said, I'm trying to buy eggs. And he said, I'll show you. And so he picked it up and shook it. And he said, shake this. So I shook it, nothing happened. He said, it's good. Hub, said the man at the market. And I said, how do I know if it's not bad? And he said, pick up another one. I shook it. And he said, if it sounds as if there are filings inside, if it shakes, then it's not good. Well, I sort of feel that if there's some kind of dislocation within the egg so that it sounds as if that there are metal balls inside shaking about, that probably does mean that the egg is very bad. So I started buying eggs, shaking them. I have to say, I've never done this since. I don't sort of go to the fridge, pick up the egg and shake it. This is something that I gave up then. So I started chatting to the guy who was called Giuseppe, and he told me that he had this wonderful canary that sang. And he said, he's a real Caruso. You must come and listen to him. And he was called Pietro the canary. So I discovered he had this little restaurant. It was where he made pizza. He had a little oven, and he made his own wine. It was like a little bit of Italy right in the middle of the city. And we started to talk, and he came from Florence, and I said, I love Firenze. And so he said, I can never go back. And I said, oh. And, I was sort of naive, but not so naive. So I went back to the house that day. I said to my boyfriend, it's really strange, he can't go back. My boyfriend didn't listen, so I told it to someone else. And I said, if you think back, maybe he came from the war. And in fact, yes, he was a war criminal, as some of them did. They went to Argentina or they went to Italy, and here was this Italian who was trying to spend time and find himself and a little bit of Italy in Kabul. And one day that I went over there, I'd go over there quite often, and the canary was sick. And he said, what shall I give? I give him all the best food, and he doesn't sing. He is a Caruso. You should hear him sing, but today he doesn't sing. When he sings, he sounds like all the birds in the world singing together in chorus. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about canaries. I live in Putney. We don't have... And so, but the canary did get better. And I often thought about Giuseppe, and that you think that you can create a world of your own in a foreign city, but you never really know what you're going to have, and what you want more than anything is to have a little bird that sings.
Antoinette Moses. Thank you so much. That's beautiful. Let's have another wild card. Are you ready? It is the wonderful Kelly Page.
Hi, friends. So, I'm going to tell you a story that happened on April Fool's Day this year. So, which I guess is significant because It's kind of funny, but it is true. So my boyfriend's birthday is on April Fool's Day. And so for his birthday to celebrate, we did a little London trip, which is very exciting. It was all kind of planned by him. We're going to go on the train, spend the day, stay night. It will be really fun, and like go and have something to eat and go to a gig, and you know, the whole works, like a very kind of special day. He's a new boyfriend, so I'm very excited about him. I said to Lorna, I was like, I'm not going to spend half an hour just talking about how into him I am. So yeah, but just know he's sexy. We like him a lot. Anyway, so he's a chef. Another great thing about him. And fuck, he would die if he was here. Anyway, so he really wanted to go to a restaurant in Soho called Humble Chicken. And I hadn't heard of it before, but it's something that he'd kind of heard from other chef friends as kind of being, a place to go. I think they're kind of pushing for a Michelin star. And the kind of setup of it, to kind of paint the picture, is it's kind of a Japanese-inspired place, but the main thing on the menu is chicken. And the kind of gimmick of it is that they use every part of the animal. It's kind of very sort of, I guess it's just a little bit poncy, but it's like using every part of the animal, but a lot of the flavors are all kind of Japanese and Asian inspired, and they cook it all in front of you, and it's all kind of small plates and sharing, and, like you said about the tapas, it comes when it's ready. It's all very like that. So that's where we went to go. And when we arrived, like if you kind of as you walk in, it's an L-shaped room, and it's a bar, and you sit up on the high seats, and they cook on the other side, and it's all quite kind of intimate and so on. And as you walk in, the sort of compere guy, the what are they called, like maitre d', the bloke at the door, says like welcome and hello, and then he shouts something in Japanese, and then everybody that's working, and there's like a number of people, like a number of chefs and like people behind the bar, shout something back, and I don't know what it was that they said, but it's like makes you feel like, oh, because it sort of must be like welcome in Japanese or something, I don't know, but you come in and you're like, okay. So this is going super well. We've already had a couple of drinks, and then we're going to carry on having like super nice cocktails and that kind of thing. So we sit down and have a look at the menu. And they have chopsticks, right? And the chopsticks are laid out, and they're propped up on these little chickens. Little ceramic, about that big chickens. Little white ones with little red bits, and little red thing, little black ones with the same matching, really cute. And I love anything like that. I'm just like, this is so amazing. Look how great. This is the cooking the stuff, and they're saying things, and oh, you're really sexy. Oh, what a night. Oh my God. Like everything about it, just so wonderful. And so it was, fast forward, we're having a really lovely time. And then like I said, the cocktails are flowing, and the more excited I'm getting about how everything is just wonderful. These little chickens, and you can kind of like play with them together, like taking little pictures of all these, like me and you, chickens. Oh, they're so cute. So we, the night sort of went on, and then, like I said, I think I'd had about 3 of these, like vodka, whatever they were, lychee, I don't know, infused with whatever bullshit. It's like that. You're buying into all of it, and at one point I was just like, oh man, I just really, really want one of those chickens. Really want to take one home. Really want it. And where the loo, so we were sitting here and the loos were there, and then there was kind of the shelf where they have like extra plates and extra things and glasses, and then loads of these chickens, like probably about 20 of them or something. And I was like, mate, look, there is actually loads of them. It's going to be fine. Like, we'll probably be all right to just take one. It'll be all right. But I didn't, because I was also thinking, this is such a nice place, you don't want to be a dick. And I used to work behind a bar, I've worked in restaurants, all that sort of thing. I was like, you don't want to be that guy. But anyway, at some stage, I went to the loo and came back, and he was just like, I've put one of them in your bag. Don't make a big deal about it, but I have put one of them in your bag. And I was just like, oh, okay. And I was excited about it. I was like, okay, well, we've got one of the chickens. But then I couldn't bear the thought that we just had one and not the pair. So I really wanted the pair of chickens to take with me, because just the memes, So anyway, the other thing to say about this is the food was really incredible, and I also tried oysters for the first time. Don't know if it was oysters, but that's a very sexy thing to eat as well, isn't it? It's like a whole aphrodisiac thing, so I had 2 of them. I was like, yeah, this is going to be a good night. And anyway, we finished eating and finished, all the rest of it, and we got the bill like fucking massive bill. I was like, oh God, the pain. Like, should we go halves? Okay, right, fine. Do all of that. And then when the woman was taking the payment and clearing everything away, she was like, do you know where the other chicken is? Just really happy about it, but she knows. And I was like, oh, no, I mean, do you know where the other chicken is? I just have no idea. Where could he have gotten to? Because they're like, it's very minimal. The only thing on the bar is just a plate, your glass, the chicken, nothing else. So it was really obvious that it was gone. And then I felt really bad because I didn't want to be that person. And I was like, well, how are we going to make it? Because you can't escape. Like, how are you going to make it so that you put the chicken back or do something? So like in my drunken state, I was like, okay, I'll just sort of take it out of my bag, because the bags are like hung up under the bar and we're on those high stools. So I sort of got it out my bag and was like, so it fell down, and then it was like, ding, what was that? Oh, it must have just fallen on the floor. So picked up the chicken, and when we went to pay the bill and kind of put it back, and she just cleared it away and was like, yeah, very good. But she was like, I knew you fucking put that chicken in your bag. But it actually wasn't me. Like, it was in my bag. Like, I was incriminated, but I actually didn't take it. But anyway, I thought that was quite cute of him, because he knew that I wanted to have the chicken, and what a good egg. So, a good egg. Bad pun. Oh, that one came out of nowhere. Anyway, so in terms of counting the chickens, at Humble Chicken, they do, in fact, count their ceramic chickens. So don't try and nick one. Even if they're super cute, I didn't go home with a chicken, so.
Kelly Page! Wonderful. I think those are the best wild cards we've ever had. They were so good, thank you. Okay, working in a nursery, I once happened upon a beautiful springtime scene with a group of children. It was two swans demonstrating their springtime love. Their friend, I assume, took offense to a crying, scared boy who hated me. Incensed by the white tissue he was holding, the guard swan began an attack. Everyone ran, leaving us two behind. I tossed him over a fence, and I think the child, not the swan. And we luckily made it to safety. Phew, I didn't get the sack for something child by swan. Loss of child by swan, there we go. I'm sorry, I butchered that. I did say legible, and you broke those rules. We just moved from the city to the countryside. My husband and kids went for a walk to see the horses in a nearby field. Half a rabbit fell out of the sky, which scared the dog, which scared the pigeons in the hedge, which scared the horses in the field, sending them galloping across the field. My husband declared, I wasn't ready for this much countryside so soon. Oh, I relate to that. I mean, yes. I heard a chirrup within my... This one's a poem. I heard a chirrup within my cat, a yawn and inspection, and that was that. Lungs and vocal cords a bird surely had, but it was sat in the bowels of my fat ginger cat. So intense. I hope that's true. Well, I don't, do I? My mum used to be really interested in collecting skeletons. She'd acquire my friends' dead pets and any old bit of roadkill to decompose at home in the garden and keep the bones. Well, your mum sounds like a hoot, for starters. One unfortunate bird found its way home inside a sandwich bag. Long story short, 2 primary-age children and one fired mum later, I opened my sandwiches one lunchtime to find them totally coated in feathers and bits of claws and half a beak. Had school dinner that day. My boys wanted a pet, so I bought them chickens. Well, at least we had eggs. They actually wanted a dog. Right, I'm going to try for this one, right? Because it is good. It's called The Story of Joyce. So my friend had rescue chickens from a fancy chicken centre. The group of 5 was supposedly a friendship group. Which I just love this concept already. I need to option the movie version of this. But she later believed Joyce had been slipped in because she was a troublemaker. I think this is Joyce. Joyce went to a children's nursery who had chickens, but they couldn't cope with her ways. I went to collect her as had volunteered to have her overnight, but she flew over a 12-foot wall into some woodland. It took me 5 hours to get her, rugby tackled her with a duvet at dusk, so that she ended up staying with me. I thought she was a regular chicken, but my friend recently admitted that she is a black Sumatran fighting bantam, which possibly explains everything. I really don't know how to prepare you for this one, but I am going to read it. My job sometimes involves viewing images on people's devices. One image I viewed in particular involved an erect male penis. Said male was masturbating himself using the decapitated neck and head of a chicken. Penis through the neck with the chicken head resting on top of his bell end. Peter, I'm sorry. It's a wide range of stories we hear here at True Stories Live. Is everyone okay? Thank you all for your mini stories. Those were intense. Are you ready for your first proper speaker, booked speaker? You were proper of the second half. Fantastic. Please, would you welcome the wonderful Pip Willett?
Hey everybody, I'm Pip. Some of you True Stories regulars might recognize me or more recognize my dog, my beautiful dog Raina. I've not brought her along this evening to everyone's sadness because she absolutely would have shown me up, but also because I wanted to shit talk her on stage like this. No, that would have been a horrible thing to do about your dog. Instead, I'm going to say some horrible things about myself because self-deprecation is cute. This story is all about a time where I ended up stranded and subsequently banned from a village on the edge of the Sahara in the Moroccan-Algerian border. I was in Morocco, I was a misguided teen, I was accompanying some friends of the family who at the time owned a business where they travelled over to Morocco every few months and did a whistle-stop tour where they bought goods from different families that specialised in creating different products. So Aswaria had particularly good ceramics makers, they'd go to Marrakesh for the tanneries for all the leather goods, Taradant for jewellery, some particularly good rug makers who lived in some very secluded cave structures in the North Atlas Mountains. On this particular trip, John, who would always do all the driving, including the leg to and from Morocco through France and Spain, decided that he wanted to do some driving for fun for once, rather than just rocketing as quickly as he could around this country, and decided he wanted to do some speeding around the sand dunes of the Sahara. So we purposely took a couple of days out of the trip in order to make this a reality. This is probably his 20th time I think he'd been to Morocco, and he'd always wanted to do it, so it was a bit of a special trip for him. So we drove as far south as we could possibly get before hitting the Algerian border, staying in a village just outside of a town called Mohammed. Popular name, there are towns called it everywhere in Morocco as well. And we pulled up just as it was about to get dark with the intention of going and driving across the sand dunes first thing in the morning as the sun was rising. As a group of Westerners who actually weren't just going for a jolly, we were welcomed with incredible amount of hospitality. So especially as soon as Sarah, who was John's partner at the time, showed an interest in buying some of the jewellery from the different families and the makers in the village, suddenly we were inundated with offers of meals, fresh mint tea, and what little alcohol could be found in this Muslim village. So this little village, it's kind of got the same structure as the towns that you see in cowboy movies, Western movies, the kind of long strip with a little crossroads in the middle. And so with the only real sign of modernity being kind of this bright red, orangey Fanta sign, neon Fanta sign, that showed that you could get this Fanta that seems to be available in a lot of remote parts of the world, the kind of really radioactive orange Fanta, the real good stuff. So we spent an evening traveling around down this strip between families, being welcomed in, and being treated incredibly well. After a number of unmarked beers and mystery spirits, I suddenly started to find the confidence to start getting involved in some of the deal making that Sarah was making with these families and the bargaining that was going on. Although I found that most of the conversations centered around the patriarch of the family asking if I'd been married or if I was betrothed. I assured him that those weren't the case. I was 17 years old. That hadn't happened to me yet. And I was polite enough to the daughters who were then introduced after I had said that I wasn't married. In my broken French and the little bit of Arabic niceties that were along the way, I seemed to get by over the course of those evenings. This attention was quite a lot for me at the time as a 17-year-old who'd only just stopped, grown out of listening to new metal on my Walkman, my big Papa Roach oversized black hoodie, my 3 quarter-length cargo shorts, and those impossibly wide Etnies skate shoes that you used to get. I had my hair spiked up using that blue hair gel that you just scooped out by the handful, applied on, shaped into spikes that I would occasionally dye devil red. Just really edgy. I had recently graduated into listening to The Killers' Hot Fuss on that same Walkman, wearing purple cardigans, skinny jeans, silver winkle pickers, and those glasses that didn't actually have any lenses in. So safe to say, teenage me was not getting much attention, and it all went to my head that I was suddenly getting attention from all these families in this remote part of Morocco. After all the deals were done, we settled down to sleep under the stars in the desert in order to get back up early so that John could go and have his gallivant around the sand dunes. John loved driving around the sand dunes, had a wonderful time, but did get a bit over-enthusiastic with one particularly tall dune, so it wasn't long before we found ourselves stuck in the sand 2/3 of the way up a dune in this 4x4 that he insisted was going to get us absolutely everywhere, and soon proved itself not to be the case. We were stranded there for a good hour or so, no supplies, no phone signal, and then we heard the sound of our saviours coming across from further in the desert. It turns out that these were guys who did a patrol of the desert when they knew that people were going out without guides. So they rocked up in their beaten up 4x4, their Range Rover, hopped out of the car, assured us they would get us out. One guy hopped into the driver's seat. The other 2 had these wooden boards that they dug under each of the tires, and they shook our 4x4 whilst the driver was putting a little bit of an accelerator on, and it wasn't too long before the car was loose. We were elated at the sight of our loose 4x4 and the prospect of being able to continue our travels, only to then see the other 2 guys hop into the back of the seats of our expensive 4x4 and soon disappear over the top of that dune that we'd just tackled. We waited there for about an hour and a half, figuring out which direction we might have to walk in order to then see another person without accidentally ending up in the Algerian border, because we would have gotten in a lot of trouble for crossing the border illegally. We did have their beaten up old 4x4, but no keys, and none of us could figure out how to hotwire something. It looks so easy in the films. So we were all seriously starting to consider which one of us would be first to be eaten. Thankfully, those guys did return, and they explained that they wanted to shake us up a little bit as almost a punishment for what had happened the previous night. They didn't explain any further. All they said was, you need to leave the area and try not to travel back through the village that you stayed in last night. We'd been back in the UK for about a month, and I was hanging out at John and Sarah's place, and John handed me a letter which he'd received a couple of mornings previous, a letter that he believed was meant for me. The letter looked very fancy. It had this headed paper, and it was from the mayor of the Principality of the town of Mohammed and the surrounding areas. And it was stating that a young man of my description, floppy hair, glasses that clearly had no function, was banned from the area not to return, having agreed over the course of a drunken evening to marry at least 8 of the daughters in the village, only to then disappear off into the desert the following morning. Safe to say, I've not returned to that area for fear of what might happen, having had our little scare of being left in the desert. Obviously, all the families had gotten together the next morning, very excitingly discussing how their lives were about to change because their daughters had agreed to marry a Westerner, before they quickly realized that they were all talking about the same guy. Yep, the crap hair. Yep, the crap glasses. And I thought about this story when asked to do a speech because I turned 30 last year, and in the 13 years since I took that trip to Morocco. Nobody's shown the slightest interest in the idea of marrying me. And I wasn't expecting an R, but that's okay, that's nice. And I wonder whether that's because some word got around about this trip before I decided to get up and talk about it. And I now come with a disclaimer that don't count your chickens with this guy, because he's probably agreed to marry at least 5 other people before getting to you. Or ended up being the guy in Jane's story who has the WhatsApp group with 5 different people talking. Thanks.
Big Willets! Thank you so much. Great. Oh, that was wonderful. So we have our final speaker. By the way, Pip's getting a badge. We have special True Stories Live badges for anyone who wants to do it. And if you would like to come and tell a story, we would love to have you. We're always looking for people. And I feel like it's the kind of thing that a lot of people think they might do one day and then just like don't prioritize because we've all got busy lives. But I promise you, you will feel amazing. We will give you free alcohol to ensure that. But aside from that, it's a challenging and brilliant thing that I think you will get a lot out of. And we will help you if you kind of come with like a little idea, but you don't really know how to shape it. We will help you do that. We're also going to run a workshop in June for anyone who wants to come to that, which is going to be really fun as well. So follow us on social media, all of those things, join a mailing list so you can hear all about that stuff. And if you do have a story, just go to our website, truestorieslive.co.uk, and get in touch with us. We have our final story now, and I have some sad news. Our final speaker of the night has lost his voice. I know, what a conundrum we're in. But don't fear, because the wonderful Lucy Farron, True Stories Live producer and co-director, is going to step in and is going to read some of his words, and then he's a musician, he was going to sing a song for us, and we're going to hear one of his songs. So a little bit of a different end to the night, but I think it's going to be gorgeous. So please welcome Fraser Wilson, coming out of the mouth of Lucy Farron.
Okay, this is the suspension of disbelief part, and I'm using notes, which is really, really naughty, but I couldn't memorize it in time. So, I'm Fraser. I was really ready to tell you my chicken story. Then I lost my voice. I literally can't even cluck. So Lucy and Molly, I'm sorry that you counted your speaking hens for tonight and that I turn out not to be among them. But thank you for channeling me instead. This moment and this life. Just when you think you've a handle on it, the world throws you a curveball and you're in a different place. A chicken suddenly lays an egg, and you can have breakfast after all. Or an egg bursts open, and you've another bird on your hands, and everything changes. Someone loses their voice, and they're no longer live, and someone's standing in for them. But then, perhaps it's meant to be this way. I'm a musician, and music is how I tell stories, how I find my voice. So that's what I'm going to do tonight instead. Look at how we tell stories to make sense of the fundamental chaos of the world. Ever-changing stories. 2 years ago, when I was just back in Norwich, my story was, I don't know why I'm here. I don't want to be. This has brought me back, and I want to go forward. And now my story of these self-same events is, the world knew I resisted, but it was right. I was just where I was meant to be. And the difference between the two is really only a question of the passing of a few cycles of chickens into eggs, into chickens, into eggs, into... We know how that goes. Which came first? We've all got some bad jokes about it, but no actual answers. It is a paradox. It's neither one thing nor the other. So my story is about how to sit with and breathe into apparently incompatible contradictions until a third way, which reconciles and goes beyond the two, emerges. Then where the chicken or egg came first ceases to matter. We can just go on. One contradiction that I've always held is being half Scottish and half English and 100% European. And therefore, I'm in some ways divided down the middle, while of course the country also seems more so than ever. And we know the power and the destruction of the binary, in, out, etc. So how do we live the contradictions in that? The morning after the 2014 independence referendum, The Guardian commissioned Carol Ann Duffy to write a poem, which she called September 2014. It speaks of the ages-old relationship between the two countries, their unbreakable bonds, how they can't live with each other, but neither can they live without each other. The borderlands where the rose and the thistle are unbreakably bound together. They hurt and bleed each other, but so do they need and nurture. And the solution she finds, and this is about where it becomes the story of the world and of each one of us beyond place and time, is Hagul Acham Osht, I love you. So this is the poem. A thistle can draw blood, so can a rose, growing together where the river flows, shared currency. Across a border it can never know, where, somewhen, Rabbie Burns might swim, or Pilgrim Keats come walking out of love for him. Aye, here's to you, cousins, sisters, brothers, in your brave, bold, brilliant land. The thistle jags our hearts. Take these roses from our bloodied hands. Hagul Acham Osht, I love you. Love is the middle way in which we find our ways beyond contradiction and conflict. This is the true power of paradox. The world is not there yet, but it was a pleasure to turn the poem into music and for a moment to find that third way. This is the ad break. When my group Albion is here next month, on the 14th of May, we will sing it for you live. But here it is, in the meantime, the recorded version, sung by my friends, Apollo 5. Take it away, Connor.
Fraser Wilson. That was beautiful, thank you. I went into a trance, though, and I didn't want to come back. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming tonight. Our next event is on the 29th of May, and the theme is Never Say Never. So, something for you to think about. We have to vote for these. So I think the three that you liked the most were the date where the bird shit went into the Fringe, the Eaton Park, hand dryer cycle. And then my sister's boyfriend coming round, the dad subscribing to the Wiggly Wigglers. They broke up soon after. The robin feeding demonstration. And then just the inexplicable met my wife at a naturist venue in Kent. So I'm gonna read them out, and then you're gonna cheer for the one you want. So the first one is Shit in the Fringe. The Wiggly Wigglers. Naturist venue in Kent. Okay, so I think that's the winner. But will someone own up to that? So this is you, and this is your wife. Okay, come on to the... No. Can you just tell us a little bit about this situation? What's going on?
Loads of people. So this is my wife. We've been married 10 years this year. And we met...
14 years ago?
Our first date, we were both naked. And we were at a naturist venue in Kent. We'd been to Orpington, but it wasn't. It was at Brands Hatch. No.
No.
That'd be a bit worrying. And so we're still married.
We are. Still happily married.
There you go. And we'll keep our clothes on so you're safe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you recommend it as a pastime?
Oh, yeah. You've got to try it.
Great. Okay. Next weekend, sea pooling. Let's do it.
Yeah, a bit cold.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have our best audience member. Would anyone like to make any nominations? He's a Geordie. He can't handle wanky coffee. He's better than that. No. Would you? Yes. Come on. Round of applause for Peter. I didn't mean he couldn't handle it. I just meant maybe he was too grounded for it. Oh, that's a pun. Lovely place, isn't it? So here you go. Yeah. Lots of firsts for you. Are you having a midlife crisis or...
My oldest daughter's a vegan.
Yeah.
And we came to find the little vegan shopping thing to buy her an Easter egg.
Yeah.
And when we were there, we bought a cup of coffee and
Yeah.
And I coffee, and Jill said, "Will you make yourself some coffee?" And I said, "Nah."
Fate! Hence the 10 bells, hence here. Great. Peter, everybody! Okay, fantastic. All right, well, we can't wait to see you next month. And let's have a massive round of applause for all of the speakers that we've heard tonight. They were wonderful. We had Jane Duffield-Bish. We had Suze Close. We had Tom Clutterbuck. We had Wildcard Antoinette Moses and Kelly Page. We had Pip Willett. We had Fraser Wilson. We had the Nudists. We had Peter. Thank you to Norwich Arts Centre for having us and all the staff here. And massive thanks, as always, to Lucy Farrant for guiding us. Thank you. Yes, massive thank you. And now we end, as always, with the best lines of the night. I want to meet the man inside. It's not the kind of thing you tell people. I don't know anything about canaries. I live in Putney. Safe to say, teenage me was not getting much attention. That's not the recipe for a chill high. Welsh vicar seeking feminine lady with traditional values. Stories make sense of the chaos of life. It's going to be hard to describe it without making it sound shit. Just know he's sexy and we like him a lot. Thank you for channeling me instead. I'm a Tory, but I don't mind that you're left wing. Dogs don't have boundaries, they just love you. We can go to Stonehenge and pray. We have a responsibility to give them the best life we can. It's quite a scary gig. Experience told me to trust my gut instinct. It comes when it's ready. We settled down to sleep under the stars. Thank you very much. Good night.